Hi everyone, my name is Kate. I absolutely love books of all types, kids, adults, young adults, historical fiction, fantasy, nonfiction. And so I thought I would use my channel to talk about some of the books that I enjoy reading. Since it's the beginning of February, I thought I would just share the books that I read in January. Some of these I started at the end of December, like after Christmas, but I did the majority of their reading in January, so I'll talk about those. Um, First, I'll share some nonfiction books that I read. This one I just finished right at the end of January. It's called Wintering by Katherine May. It is an absolutely gorgeous book. She uses the winter time to talk about different times in our life and the dark times and the hard times. But she talks about it in such wonderful language that it paints a beautiful pictures in your head. She uses her own story of hard times that she's gone through to kind of show us what we should be doing during these hard times. And I wanted to share one of my favorite quotes with you. It says, "Life meanders like a path through the woods. We have seasons when we flourish and seasons when the leaves fall from us, revealing our bare bones. Given time, they will grow again." So I really enjoyed this book. It was a great time to read this book with all of this gloomy weather we've been having. And it just kind of helped me look at this season of my life with a little bit of a different outlook. The other nonfiction book I read, which is probably what I have to say the best self-help book that I have read ever, and I've read a bunch of them because I'm kind of a mess. But this one is called The Queen's Path by Stacy Simmons. She uses pop culture references and talks about the path that all women must walk. She uses everything from Wonder Woman to the movie Frozen, and it is just a really amazing book. I read it about a chapter a day because there was so much to take in and so much to think about. And there were a ton of favorite quotes, but one of my favorite ones, she defines the word sovereignty, which before this book, I really hadn't given a lot of thought to in my personal life, just sort of in the religious sense. So she defines sovereignty as recognizing your own power and coming to every encounter with the presumption that your will matters. I don't like confrontation. I don't like to make waves. I get very nervous, and I'm trying to work on that because there's a lot of confrontation that comes along in our lives. So for 2025, I'm focusing on the word sovereignty and how I can use that in my day-to-day life. So those were the two nonfiction books that I read: Wintering by Katherine May and The Queen's Path by Stacy Simmons. Now I want to share some of the fiction books I read, and I'm very excited. All of these books definitely have the overall theme of women empowerment, but in a few different ways. The first one is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. You may have seen this either online or in a bookstore. It's really popular. It took me a little while to get into it, but I'm really glad that I kept reading. The premise is that Addie is being forced into a marriage she doesn't want to do. And she meets this dark god down by the river and makes a pact with him that he would give her what she thought she wanted, the freedom, but in return, nobody would ever remember her. Meaning, after they made that pact, she would go back home and her parents would have no idea who she was. So this goes on through her life, and until she meets a man, Henry, and he remembers her because he's made his own deal. So it was a really fun book to write. I'm going to share a quote because my belief is even in fiction books, you can learn a lot about empathy and things and enjoy things like quotes. So I'm going to share with you my favorite quote, and that is, "She pauses at memoir, studying the titles on the spines. So many I's and me's and my possessive words for possessive lives. What a luxury to tell one story, to be read and to remembered." And I think we all as humans want to be remembered And this book really broke it down to show that it's such a core value for us. The second book I read was called The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen. Anything with Greek mythology I tend to gravitate towards because my middle child loved Greek mythology ever since they were like 6. Their 7-year-old birthday party was a Greek toga party, which was quite a lot of fun. But in this story, the heroine is cursed by Zeus for no one to ever love her. And through a series of events, she ends up being pulled in by Hades to be his champion in the games, which the winner of the games, the god who wins the games, is going to rule Mount Olympus. And she isn't quite sure whether or not she's just a pawn or actually his champion. Now, as I'm reading the book, I'm getting drawn into the characters. I'm really loving the story. And near the end, I kept going in my head, there's so many loose ends. How is the author going to bring this all back together? Then I did a little research and found out this is book 1 of a series that is being written. So I would definitely suggest this one if you like fantasy. I do want to warn you that the author kind of drops you right in the middle of the action. So it might take you a little bit kind of get your footing over where the story is taking place and things like that. But I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to spoil it for you. Oh, and my quote for this one is, "Fear is a tool, one I have been learning to use my whole life." And I really liked that because fear can either paralyze you or it can push you. And I try to let it push me and do scary things. The last one I want to share is one that my daughter gave me for my birthday called Once and Future Witches, and this is by Alex Haro. So there's 3 sisters in this book, and they all got separated, and they finally come together in this town of New Salem. And at this point, there is no witchcraft. There used to be witchcraft, but it's gone. So with the backdrop of the suffragette movement, the author weaves a story about how these 3 sisters work to bring magic back. And the reason I really liked this book was that it brought back a lot of fairy tales and little rhymes you might have recognized as a kid, but kind of gave them a magical twist. And so that was a really fun surprise as I read it. I didn't want to put it down. It was hard to put it down. And the quote from this that I wanted to share is, "Every woman draws a circle around herself. Sometimes she has to be the only thing inside of it." And I think this kind of mirrors back to my book that I read, Wintering. The fact that as women, a lot of times we feel like we need to take care of everybody, and sometimes we need to close off our circle and just take care of ourselves. Anyway, that was my January reading. I'm reading some fun ones in February, and I'll look forward to sharing those with you at the end of the month. Happy reading!